There's a rapper out of San Antonio named Trapalot, and his story sounds too wild to be real. Before the music videos, before the fame, he found a way to make millions of dollars doing something most people wouldn't even believe. While his name was blowing up online, behind the scenes, he was living a dangerous double life, using his rap career as a front for an operation that crossed lines most wouldn't dare to cross. Nobody knew what was really going on, not his fans, not the streets, not even the people closest to him. But the truth would eventually come out, and when it did, it changed everything. This is the untold story of Trapalot, the San Antonio rapper who turned his come up into $1 million empire and paid the ultimate price for it. Trapalot grew up on the east side of San Antonio, on a block known as Lincolnshire 500, a place where struggle wasn't a phase, it was a lifestyle. His mom worked long hours just to keep food on the table, and his father was locked up in federal prison, leaving Trapalot and his brother home alone with his Mexican grandmother most of the times. They spend their days hanging with the older neighborhood kids who are already smoking weed, fighting, and flirting with trouble. It didn't take long before Trapalot got pulled into it. By the time he was 10, he'd already caught his first high, coming home smelling like smoke while his mom tried to hold it together. She knew she had to pull her sons out of that life, so she did what any mother would do. She turned to hope. She signed them up for soccer, hoping it would keep them busy and off the block. For a while, it worked. Trapalot started to focus on the field, chasing goals instead of problems. But the pull of the streets was stronger than any sport. Before long, he found himself slipping back into his old habits. At just 11 years old, he was arrested for stealing bikes and throwing rocks at houses, his first real run-in with the law. The cops let him off with a warning, dropping him at home. But instead of learning a lesson, it only fueled his curiosity. By middle school, things had escalated. He was constantly suspended and eventually expelled after bringing an ounce of weed to school. Weed he'd bought with money stolen from his mom's tip jar. Around that same time, his mom met a new man, a business owner who took them out of the hood and into the suburbs. For the first time, they had stability, a house, money, and even private school. But you can't erase the past that easy. When Trapalot reunited with his old friends, the cycle started all over again. By 12, he was caught with 2 stolen guns and sent to juvenile detention. That's where his world truly changed. Behind those walls, he met others just like him, kids hardened by loss and chaos. And together, they formed a bond that would later become a group known as EGB, short for Eat Greedy Boyz. After losing one of their closest friends, the crew's loyalty deepened, but so did the violence. Shootouts, robberies, and late-night missions became part of daily life. Childhood was over. Surrounded by loss, violence, and betrayal, Trapalot was forced to grow up fast, adapting to a world that only knew 2 outcomes: get money or get buried. Surrounded by the chaos of street life, Trapalot began to find a new kind of inspiration: music. The streets had shaped his mindset, but artists like Lil Mouse, a young Chicago rapper who blew up at a young age, showed him there was another way to tell his story. Trapalot saw himself in that, a kid from the struggle, trying to make something out of nothing. By 2020, he was still knee-deep in the game, hustling, selling weed, and robbing just to survive. But the idea of making music kept pulling at him. One night, out of boredom and curiosity, he and a few friends decided to record a track at a buddy's house using a cheap home setup. It wasn't planned or polished, but when they played it back, everyone in the room knew it had something special. The energy, the rawness, it was real. On the spot, they decided to shoot a music video that same day. They uploaded it online, not expecting much, but within days, the numbers started climbing. Thousands of views turned into tens of thousands, and just like that, Trapalot had people talking. The buzz was real. His DMs started filling up, new followers rolled in, and his name began spreading past San Antonio. Friends and fans pushed him to keep going, to take music seriously. Then came his breakout hit, SRT. The track exploded overnight, pulling in massive views and giving him real recognition in the underground scene. For the first time, Trapalot wasn't just a street kid. He was an artist with a story. His life was changing fast. His name was buzzing, and fame was finally within reach. But just as things were starting to take off, he began to pull back. The streets weren't done with him yet. By the time Trapalot's music started blowing up, he was living a double life. On one side, he was a rising star from San Antonio, his name buzzing, his songs pulling in views, fans starting to take notice. But behind the fame, he was still knee-deep in the streets, chasing money the fast way. Selling weed and hitting licks wasn't cutting it anymore. He wanted real money. And in South Texas, there was one underground business that could provide exactly that. The business of moving illegal immigrants was booming. All along the border, people were paying anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per person to be smuggled into the US. Cartels controlled the routes, and drivers, often young men from small towns or the city, were paid to pick up migrants from stash houses near the border and transport them to nearby cities like San Antonio, Austin, or Houston. It was quick, dangerous, and extremely profitable. That's when one of Trapalot's friends introduced him to the game. At first, it sounded unreal. A short drive, a fat stack of cash, No drugs, no weapons, just people. But once he realized how much money could be made, he dove in head first. Trapalot made contact with the cartel connection, and suddenly, he was no longer playing small. He started organizing the trips, coordinating drivers, and taking a bigger cut. The cash started pouring in, thousands turning into tens of thousands, then hundreds. But even that wasn't enough. Trapalot knew driving personally was risky. One checkpoint, one wrong move, and it was over. So he came up with something no one had done before. He used his rap career as the perfect front. As his music buzz grew, so did his following online. Trapalot began advertising the smuggling runs right on his Instagram story, disguised as easy money opportunities. He'd post offers like $5,000 for a quick hour-and-a-half drive, gas paid. To his fans, it looked like a harmless hustle. To him, it was genius. Within months, people were lining up to drive. Everyone wanted in. Young fans, broke kids, people chasing the come up. They didn't care what they were moving. They just wanted the payout. And for Trapalot, it meant one thing: expansion. Before long, he had built a quiet empire. Trucks and drivers running daily, thousands turning into millions. While the music gave him fame, the smuggling gave him fortune. His name was everywhere, online, in the streets, and now whispered among law enforcement. Trapalot was getting rich, but he was also getting reckless. His songs were still going viral, but he wasn't dropping music anymore. Studio sessions were replaced with logistics meetings, and beats were replaced with business calls. For Trapalot, rap was no longer the dream, it was the disguise. At this point, Trapalot was on top of the world. Money, status, fame, everything he'd once dreamed about. But the higher he climbed, the harder the fall that was waiting. As time passed, the money started slowing down. What was once a gold rush had turned into a crowded hustle. More people were getting into the smuggling game, flooding the business and driving prices down. The easy money that once came in fast was now trickling in slow. To keep up his lifestyle, Trapalot started pushing harder. He took on more routes, ran more trips, and began experimenting with new ways to move people across the border. He and his crew found hidden paths through private ranches, dirt trails, and off-road shortcuts. Anything to stay off the main highways that were crawling with border patrol. For a while, it worked. The money started flowing again, but so did the risk. Trapalot had always followed one rule: never drive the lows yourself. But as profits shrank and paranoia grew, he broke his own code. The hunger for fast money made him careless. One night, desperate to pull off a big score, he decided to do the run himself. It started like any other job. He picked up a small group of immigrants and took a back route through a rural Texas ranch, headlights bouncing off the dirt road. Everything felt routine, quiet, too quiet. Then, as he neared the other side of the property, flashing lights lit up the darkness. Border Patrol was already there, waiting. It was a setup from the start. In seconds, everything he built came crashing down. The money, the empire, the illusion of control, gone. Trapalot was arrested on federal smuggling charges. His operation dismantled overnight. The fame, the music, the millions, all of it disappeared. For the first time, Trapalot had nothing. No crew, no cash, no freedom. Just the weight of every choice that brought him there. After his arrest, Trapalot spent a little over a year behind bars, time that forced him to slow down and face everything he had been running from. Locked in a cell, away from the streets and the noise, he started to find peace in the one thing that had always kept him grounded: music. Even while incarcerated, he managed to release songs, his voice echoing through prison phones and studio connections on the outside. The world hadn't forgotten about him. If anything, his name carried more weight now than ever. When he finally walked out of those federal gates on probation, Trapalot was hungry for a fresh start. This time, he swore he'd leave the fast life behind and focus on his true gift. He poured himself into music, dropping videos, reconnecting with fans, and trying to rebuild the career he once threw away for quick money. For a while, it looked like he was really changing. But freedom comes with temptation, and old habits die hard. Just as things began to pick up again, Trapalot found himself back in federal custody after violating his probation. The streets had taken him once again, pulling him right back into the cycle he'd promised to escape. Trapalot had it all: the fame, the money, the respect. But in the end, the same hustle that made him a millionaire was the one that took it all away. From the east side of San Antonio to federal prison, his story shows how fast success can turn into survival. Because when you build an empire on the streets, it's never a question of if it'll fall, it's just when. This was the story of Trapalot, the rapper who turned the hustle into a fortune and paid the ultimate price for it.